Welcome back to the Remote No Pressure Podcast, Bill.
Hey, it's great to be back.
This is our third take. The first time I stole your line. The second time I didn't hit record, but the third time's a charm, Bill. Third time is an absolute charm. The best part about this is we have to sync up the video with the audio, and I've mentioned this before, Bill. There's nothing cooler than you clapping.
Doing my walrus clap.
The walrus clap, because you have to pull back by the mic.
Yeah, I don't want to push the mic forward like this and then clap in front of the mic and then pull it back to my mouth. That looks unprofessional.
So every time we start and you guys hear me laughing, it's usually because Bill's walrus clap. But that's what syncs up the audio and the video, and it's absolutely hilarious. So, Bill, you're over COVID. How are you feeling these days? You back 100%?
Yeah, no residual, nothing.
Did your wife get her taste back? Didn't she lose her sense of taste?
Nope, just her sense of smell.
Her sense of smell.
Yep, she's about 50%. She's getting better.
Yeah.
Every day's a little bit stronger, yeah.
Isn't smell and taste
connected? Yeah.
So if you can't taste, it's because you can't smell.
Yeah.
Wow. We need to get Dr. Brad Boone on here to give us the official connection.
You should get it. Yeah. And your ears are connected to all that too.
Really?
Yeah, ear, nose, and throat's all connected. And your eyes, actually. There's a whole... Like, I used to be able to blow air out of my eyes when I was a kid.
Sure. Then what happened? Why can't you... Have you
I haven't
tried it in a while?
I grew
should
up.
you try it for the YouTube channel?
Nope, I should not.
Did you, remember Jackass, that show Jackass?
Yeah.
There was always that weird stuff going on, like, you know... when that was our time, so we would do stupid stuff. Did you ever do any of the stupid stuff
Nope.
like that?
I didn't want to get hurt, man. They'd be like, I remember when it first came out in the 90s.
Uh-huh.
And they'd be like crashing shopping carts into like curbs and flipping and just doing dumb stuff. And it was entertaining, but it wasn't until the movies came out when it got like next level, you know, like pooping in public. You remember that?
Yeah, you could only go so far though. Like, and then you gotta top it, the last one. And then before long, it's just completely out of control.
Like they were getting rental cars and crashing them up and returning them.
I actually think about that every time I rent a car. I always think like...
Always getting the insurance?
Get the insurance and be like, this bad boy's not coming back, right?
He didn't get the insurance, did he?
I don't know.
I think he opted out on that. Yeah.
But, you know, I'm sure they had it in their budget to pay for it, though.
Oh, yeah.
So...
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, yeah, crazy. Well, I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. We're in the middle of the holiday season. Couple things to remember. All T-shirts, cotton shirts, short sleeve during the holiday season are $18. That includes shipping, taxes, the whole shooting match. Look at that. Fly fishing is dead right there. And we actually talk about that on this podcast. And also, I'm wearing the same shirt. Fly fishing is dead.
And make sure you tune into the YouTube so you can tell we're not wearing the exact same shirt at the same time. Because that would be, how would we talk in the microphone then?
I sent you the navy one, and I got the gray one.
Yeah.
Do you like the navy?
I like the navy. Yeah.
We also have the purple one too, which is really far out, man.
Whoa. Do you have that one?
Yeah, I don't have that one. Well, actually, I think I do own one of those as a sample just to see how the color came out, and it's kind of girly, you know. The girls like. Well, some of the guys do too. It's pretty sweet if you're into Deadhead.
Yeah.
If you're a Deadhead, it's really really cool. I love this design by Ron Blumenkemper. He did a great job on that, But yeah, so that's up. Also, pre-sales are up as well for our CD Heaven, which is coming out this month, actually in December.
Awesome.
Yep. And so if you want to hear it before anyone else, you can buy a physical CD. All of our live shows were canceled, obviously, so revenue has always been an issue this year for everybody. So I know no one listens to CDs, but...
What's a CD?
It's a compact discs.
Ah.
But it is really supporting what we're doing, and we'll send you a CD. We also have some T-shirts available with their awesome design on it as well, so you can get like a combo. So I have really been overwhelmed by the number of pre-orders we've had.
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you everyone who's gone online and pre-ordered that. In other news. According to Fox 26 of Houston, as we know, any source of Fox, this isn't Fox 20, this isn't Fox News, this is Fox 26,
like a local.
Yeah. So it's probably a little more fair and balanced.
Maybe.
Mysterious monolith found in remote part of Utah fuels speculation on how it got there. You already know this.
I have heard this one. Yeah.
What did you hear?
Just I've seen pictures and like the footage of these kind conservation officers out there who found it while herding elk, I believe, or counting. Not elk,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, sheep, but like wild sheep, you know?
Yeah, Utah's Highway Patrol shared a picture of the finding on their Instagram along with the caption, "Counting bighorn sheep with DWR this week. During the counts, we came across this in the middle of nowhere, buried deep in the rock. Inquiring minds want to know, what the heck is this, anyone?"
Yeah, and it's like 12 feet tall or so, roughly.
Yeah.
10 or 12 feet tall. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, it says here the object drew comparisons to Stanley Kubrick's famed 1968 film 2001, A Space Odyssey, which saw a group of apes encounter a similar-looking giant slab. I'm assuming it's some new wave artist or something, or, you know, somebody that was a big 2001 Space Odyssey fan. So it is what it is.
Oh, they're saying it's an art piece.
I think it's
The
an art
officials
piece.
are.
But what if it wasn't? What if it was the real deal?
Other people are saying that it's kind of buried into the stone and it's been there for thousands of years. Other people in the conspiracy side are saying that it's a distraction for us to focus on that while other stuff's going on.
Really?
That's what I've heard.
Like
yeah.
QAnon or something?
Yeah, well, you can't say that on YouTube.
Beep that one out.
Yeah, because they will kick us off for that. If you say that word.
If you say the word, I sound like the lead singer from the Counting Crows. Word. No, if you say, but if you say that in a way that's not supporting it, like if you're criticizing it,
Oh, that could be.
I would think.
Well, you want to test it out? We'll leave it in.
We'll leave it in and see what
we'll
happens.
Leave it in.
We'll leave it in. But you said some conspiracy theorists are saying that.
Yeah, and to distract us of the election stuff.
Well, we've talked about aliens in depth on this podcast before, and you and I both. Well, I believe there are other dimensions. You think they're otherworldly, like spiritual objects.
Well, the two are one. I mean, like otherworldly could be other dimensions, or other dimensions could be the spiritual side too.
Yeah, we need someone who is an expert in other dimensions to come on the show. Do you know any other dimension experts?
No, not in this dimension. No, I don't.
Oh my gosh. Well, this week on the Remote No Pressure podcast, we have Mr. Les Booth. Les Booth is an artist, a digital artist, creating digital content. But one of the reasons I reached out to Les is just because he's a really nice guy. Looking forward to some of the things he has in the hopper, which we're going to talk about a little bit on this podcast coming up here. He's a writer as well, runs a website, and he's an Indiana boy. Last Dance with Mary Jane. Indiana boys on the my brother-in-law lives in Indiana, so every time I go see them, I always put on that Last Dance with Mary Jane song. And I was like, "Why do you listen to the song?" I'm like, "Listen to the words." She goes, "Oh my gosh, I never heard that." So, yeah, but he's an Indiana boy. Although he's not a boy, he's a grown man. But Les is a great guy, and we're super happy to have him. Welcome to the podcast. Let's light the fire. Well, today on the Remote No Pressure podcast, I'm very excited to have digital content producer on, Mr. Les Booth. Thanks for hanging out with me, Les.
Oh, thank you, Jeff.
Is that the correct title for you?
That's one that works.
What are the other ones that work for you? What are you known for, Les?
The way that I sign myself is called Creative Information Architect.
Then is that an official title, or is that something you created?
I created that some 10, 12 years ago. And now I've seen several people, individuals who go into work for a company and they create the content structure. So whether it's video media, audio media, text media, or a combination, whether they go out and get used media or they get to make their own media, that person who puts that all together and designs the process is called a content information architect, or I call myself a creative information architect.
Now, I don't know if you're retired or what did you do before? I mean, did you have another career, another life where you were doing that in the regular world, or what'd you do?
One, two. I started out to be an architect.
Okay.
That's what I really wanted to be. I was deeply impressed by the work of a very well-known architect Frank Lloyd Wright.
Sure.
And I designed a few homes that were built here in our local area. And I wanted to be an architect. I just thought that's the neatest thing. So I went to school. I went to a small college in Pasadena, California to kind of get my speed up. But I found out that UCLA wanted me to take regular courses like English 101 and
sure,
mathematics.
Your basics. Yeah.
I wasn't going to be able to jump into Frank Lloyd Wright 527. And I didn't like that. So I said, forget it, guys. I'm going home. And but anyway, that was the end of my architect career. So I decided I wanted to get into art in some way. I started as a graphic designer and worked at the University of Kentucky for several years. I went that direction because my wife lived in Lexington. She's a native of Kentucky. And I had opportunity to work at UK for several years, worked in the engineering department in a group called ORES, Office of Research Engineering Services. And it was basically entities that worked for civil engineering, electrical engineering, other chemical engineering, various aspects of engineering. They would have their own groups that would do various things, like guys in electrical, they built electrical equipment, did all kinds of tests. Guys in civil, they broke and made things all the time that worked in the outdoors. Our group, we were called, affectionately, I'd like to say, the cartoonists.
Okay.
And we did line drawings. If you performed a test and you had a graph chart, we turned that graph on paper into a very nice chart, illustrated very professionally, and then we'd take it in and have it photographed, and it'd make a slide.
Oh, wow.
Back in the old days of a 35 millimeter film slide.
Mm-hmm.
I did that for about 4 years. Actually, I did that for about 2.5 years. And I got an opportunity to go to the chemistry building under the physics and astronomy side.
Okay.
So I worked in physics and astronomy as their cartoonist
mm-hmm.
for a while. I ran a very large electronics lab. I had no idea what a BNC connector was when I went there, or a capacitor practically, or a resistor. I just knew I was resisting that. And I had to learn Fortran. That was a mistake. Math is a big 4-letter word, all caps. And I went from there to geology. The fellow that I took the job in physics astronomy, he suggested I go look at this one in geology. And then there, I became the cartoonist. Again, at that time, I drew a lot of crinoids, blastiopods, a whole bunch of paleontological creatures that are found in coal seams.
Okay.
Which is called soft rock shell. And at the time, the major professor I worked with was the principal investigator for a rather large, turned out to be, grant called the EGSP, Eastern Gas Shells Project.
Okay.
And it was designed as a government boondoggle to let the American people think we're going to take care of our energy because the Arabs had just turned off the spigot. And we've got oil here. We'll make it here. And as I like to tell people, a funny thing happened on the way to the shale bank. We found something. And it really wasn't intended to find anything. But what came out of that was what you now call fracking.
Sure.
And it had been actually invented at Baylor between Baylor, I think, and University of Minnesota had a combined effort, and they invented it back in the 30s. Huh. But it was so cost prohibitive to do the extraction. What you're doing, you're plunging down into the ground, and you pump in saline solution that's heated multi-hundred degrees Kelvin or centigrade, and you're blasting it at 40 to 75,000 PSI. and it literally explodes a big hole, and then you suck all the stuff up and separate the oil, and it was only about 40 to 42% efficient. Everything else was lost. All the gases were lost. So basically in 1978, 79, first part, they determined that $52.50 a barrel was the break even. And oil, even at the end of the embargo, was selling for about $18 to $20 a barrel. So it wasn't break even. Then along came the 90s, and they made a cocktail, gigantic cocktail, threw a bunch of stuff into it that was way more than saline solution, more than salt, and developed what they call sequestering. So you suck all this stuff up and you got extra, and you throw it back down in the ground and hold it in that hole. Sounds like a great idea until that stuff down there, which is a horrendous, I mean, a horrible witch's brew. It's extremely toxic. Finds its way back up through the natural fissures and cracks in the movement of the earth, brings things open.
Sure.
And up it flows into a water column. And that's why you hear the stories of people in Pennsylvania and other places turning on their faucet and they can light the water.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's true. It happens.
Yeah.
And it's still happening. And that's why you have earthquakes in places like Oklahoma. They have actually no faults per se.
Really?
And you have, all you have to do is go to USGS seismic map and look at all of the 1.1 and 1.2 and 2.5 earthquakes that occur in areas that have no history of earthquakes. Wow. And you can find that there are fracking wells near there.
Huh, interesting.
So anyway, they pull out about 75 to 80%. And it's oil, gas, and gases, methane, carbon dioxide, and all the hexane types of gases. And they pull them off, ketones, they pull them off, and separate them out. And by the time that stuff comes to the surface, there's just a slurry of horrendous toxin and return trip down in the hole.
Wow.
And that's where your natural gas, we have a glut of natural gas right now. And there's a lot of oil. So that's what I did at the University of Kentucky until 1979. My father was killed in a chainsaw accident and then moved back up here to Indiana to help my mom. And the old saying is, well, we're going to go for a while and we'll return. That was 40 plus years ago. Anyway,
I came to Michigan in 2002 for just a couple of years.
I was going to ask you, did the military bring you there, or
no,
your wife?
I was a musician. I still am a musician, as a lot of people know. I graduated from, I'm not going to say the name of the school because it's that pathetic, but I call it the Harvard of the South with Mr. Paul Torres, And so I got hired by a mega church here to be one of their music people on staff there. And, the church is like 8,000 people, and it's just a machine. And I did that for a couple years, and I just hated to see how the sausage was made in religion, the back end of things. So I went back to school for business and graduated with a bachelor's degree in business here locally. But I met my wife, who's from here, and we got married. And she's great. We've been married 16 years, and it's just a couple years doing that. And I guess the guy I worked with was a great guy. He's like completely. I think he got in touch with a guru, and he changed his name. And he's wearing like robes. I think his name is Vishnu. Vishnu, I think, is his new name. His previous name was Michael.
Yeah.
And they hired this 19-year-old kid to manage an 8,000 member church music department. So like our choir was over 300 people. Whoa. So our choir alone was like, I don't know why I'm telling you all this. I've had a glass of wine, so maybe that's why. But we had our choir was over 300 people, so that's bigger than most churches, and they have this 19-year-old kid running it who you don't know anything when you're 19 years old. I mean, so anyway, so it was kind of a tough time. It was a rough time for me because, I had this, a lot of times when people go into ministry or become counselors or social workers, they really think they're going to change the world,
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the people that have been in social work for like 20 years, 30 years. They're all jaded, and they're like, well, just doing my best. Doing my best. You know what I mean?
My time.
Yeah. So I was, yeah, exactly. So I was just like, I don't want to do this. 2-3 years in, I'm like, this is not what I was born to do. And so I ended up doing that. So it went into business and things like that. And, so in order to cope with my stress, and I guess that absence of religion, as I've grown older, I guess you could say a lot of people think I've fallen away. I've replaced that with fly fishing in the community there. That's really my church at this point, and the people that I've met along the way, the stories I've heard, it attracts a different form of people. And we've talked before, Les. I mean, we've had some good conversation. The last time we talked. Now, you said your father had passed away from a chainsaw accident in 1979. Yeah. How old were you at the time?
Oh man, that's math. That's a 4-letter word. I was, 27 years old. Wow. Actually, I was 26. I'd be 27. I was just. My dad was. We talked about, how I got into fly fishing. My grandfather, my mom's dad, was the one who I saw fly fishing, but my dad's who got me into the outdoors. He really liked the outdoors. Mm-hmm. We fished on the stream. We were bait fishermen. He loved trying plugs. He loved bait casting back in the mid-late 50s. Bird nest soup every third. And but he stayed with it. I remember I was thinking today, the first fish I ever caught was a fish of note, was about a 3.5 pound smallmouth.
Oh, wow.
Caught it on a minnow, dead float, through a pool on a Shakespeare bell cast.
Wow.
And it's an old Shakespeare Wonderglass rod, comes down into a bell housing that you literally pull. It's a forerunner to the spin. It was a enclosed spin. You pull the handle unit, slid it sideways, held onto the string, and cast this thing like it's got half the size of a bocce ball at the end of it. But it would cast like crazy. When I found a Mitchell 300, I thought I had literally risen to the heights of greatness because, but I was never really enthralled with just going out catch fish. But when I saw my grandfather casting, that was something that was interesting with a fly rod. Then my dad was transferred to he moved to North Carolina. We were down for about 2 years or so as a family. And he took training for Olin Matheson in making cellophane. And the guys that were in the cellophane plant, and this is a little part we talked about before, a couple years back, we were in down in Bryson City and went to the Appalachian, Fly Fishing Museum in the Appalachian or Smoky Mountains. And I walked in, and it literally from the time that I started walking down the wall looking, I was reading the names of either the people my dad worked with at Olin's or people he was introduced to.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was all the movers and shakers, the people who were the trout fishermen in the Smoky area there from Maggie Valley down to Brevard and up into the park. So my dad really got turned on to trout fishing. Of course, we live in Indiana.
Right.
We can spell the word trout. We know what they look like. And every now and then we've got a place that's got a couple of tailwaters so we can actually go fish for them. But trout are not our main species here. So it's a warm water state. And I grew up, my trout were chubs.
Right.
And my game fish was a smallmouth. So it didn't take long for me to want to fish with a fly. And we were poor. I did not have anything. My dad had a fly rod. He would he'd show me how to use it. But my forehand was, I stopped somewhere about -12. And he didn't want to see his fly rod broken. And then one day he comes home with this steel hexagonal 9-foot 6-inch 1-piece South Bend rod with a South Bend reel with who knows what the line was, but it had a line and I could tie some not nylon, but plastic. Well, what do I want to talk about? Tippet material, leader material at that time, like trilene, but it was before trilene. Anyway, I could tie it on. I could tie a fly on. And when you're fishing for smallmouth, especially at my point there, I wasn't really thinking about step down leaders, and tippets all the way down. It was just tie it on and tie a bug on and go. Of course, my cast was like, I smashed the water. It just looked like a hippopotamus was frailing in death every time I cast. And my dad would just go on like, oh, man. And he really went, oh, because I was catching fish. And he wasn't. But I just loved it. I would go up and down the creek. The time I was 5 years old, I was on the creek every day I could. And if I fished, I fished. If it wasn't, I was investigating. I was just turning over rocks and doing whatever. My little sister at the time, I had mentioned before, my mom, she was a humongous storyteller. She could tell stories like to beat the band. Literally, she would start reading a book. And this is what it was. I mean, one of our first books I remember her reading was the story of Pecos Bill, and over Texas, and Paul Bunyan, and they all get together.
I'm from Texas. I'm a big fan of Pecos Bill as a kid.
Yeah, and so if you can picture the book, Pecos Bill, and he's out there riding the tornado and the whole 9 yards. Well, the stories went too fast. And Mom, read it again. After about the 9th or 10th time through Pecos Bill, come on, let's read the Gulag or something. And she would open it up and she'd start reading. And we were just like, and she was just making it up.
Just keep going.
Totally on the fly. Oh, I wish could have recorded.
Yeah.
But she would just make it up. And I remember as a teenager, I found that book in a library. And I opened it up and I'm reading through it and I'm going like, where's the stuff that Mom was talking about? That porch, it had all those critters under the porch, and Pecos would crawl under there and play with these snakes and armadillos and things. It wasn't in the book. So I asked her and she said, I made that all up, Thank you. But anyway, so that was kind of the seeding factor of story time.
So between your dad's outdoor passion for the outdoors and your mom's storytelling, it sounds like you're kind of a product of both of those two combined.
Yeah, my dad, I thought my dad knew everybody on the face of planet Earth. we would drive to town. Of course, my world consisted of about a 24-mile circular area, and outside of that was the hinterlands. And but we go to town, and as soon as we hit anywhere near town, Dad was waving at people and everyone, hey, Jim, how you doing? How's it going? Hey, is that Leslie with you? Yeah. So, and you walk down the street and talk, hey, are you Jim Boo's boy? Yeah. And all the time I would get that. I thought, man, this guy knows everybody.
Do you think it was coincidence, or just as a kid you noticed it more? Or if it wasn't coincidence, why do you think that was? Why was he such an influential person? Why were so many people attracted to your dad?
My dad was in a book that I really, let me see if I got that. I got a whole bunch of books from my stack here, and I don't think I pulled that one out. Oh, yeah, it's here. Pardon my farmhouse reach here. This book is one of the best books I have ever read. Tim LaHaye did the series on Left Behind, and I'm not into that. But this was one that he and his wife did on temperaments. And I had a good friend of mine that told me about temperaments back, 30-some years ago, probably 35. And I really didn't know what he was talking about, but I knew that dogs and horses had temperament. I just never thought of people having temperament. And just they had tempers. I felt that. And so, when he mentioned this, he gave me the book, this not this one, but a book of the same title. And I picked it up, started reading it, and it's like, whoa, the Roberta Flack, killing me softly with his words. He sat there and he's telling my whole life story. That's what I thought. I was like, man, this is me.
Wow.
And they're basically, you have 4 separate temperaments and you're a mixture of them. And a lot of people do personality, and personality is true. You have a personality, but it's like that mayfly. It's ephemeral. It's only as your temperament is affected by your area around you, your environment. My dad had the exact same temperament I do, which is called sanguine melancholy. Sanguine,
sure.
Walk into the room, mouth first, life of the party, and melancholy, meaning thoughtful and artistic and can be a pain in the tushy at times. All right. But you put the two together and it can be a lot of fun to talk with. And that was my dad. He was just a lot of fun to be around. A nice guy, did things for people. And he would give the shirt off his back. That was a lot of times that's all he had. But he was just that kind of a guy. And when you're that way, people like you and they notice you.
Right.
And I thought, that was interesting. I knew nothing about this as far as temperament. But I remember I had a physiology class in school. I went to Purdue and got a degree, went for a degree in fisheries aquatic science, did not go all the way with it. Got all the fisheries requirement, everything. But they wanted me to do math. I struggled so hard to get through the basic parts of math that when it finally got to where I actually passed my first semester of calculus, I said, time out. I don't want to spend the rest of my life in school. What else can I do? So I got a degree in ag systems management. But I had a physiology class. And in that class, the gentleman at the last class, basically, he would bring this other man in to talk. And I think he was a minister, but a very interesting speaker. And he asked the question of the class, who was your most influential person in your life? I happened to be sitting in the very last seat up there in Ralph's mouth, the very back seat. And it went, and I was the last person. And I had a lot of time to think about it. And I have, at that point in my life, I had been around a lot of different people. But there was one person whom I knew would be the hardest shoes to fill in my life. And I'd spend my entire life trying to do it and hopefully do it well. And that was my dad. And like I said, he died in 1979. That was 41 years ago this past August. And so I have been without my dad almost twice as long as what I had him present. And but he was a marked individual, that actually remarkable. Very, very interesting, kind, and good-hearted man. So if I can be even just 10% of what he was, I'll be okay. So yeah, that's the influence that it has.
Very kind words about your father. That's really great. We had talked a little bit before about RNP, Remote No Pressures campaign right now that's been going on this year. Fly fishing is dead. And the reason we have that is not because we don't honor those who have gone before, like Lefty Cray and those legends that have gone on that have completely. And I would say, even when they came on the scene, they would say fly fishing is dead because they, were pioneers. It's one of those things where Flip Pallet and those guys were they were pioneers. They, the old is gone and the new is here, And so when we talk about fly fishing is dead, like on our t-shirts and stuff, it's not because we don't honor those that have gone before, but it's because we appreciate that. But I interviewed Paul Torres, and he is down from Texas, and we were talking about fly fishing, and he loved fishing growing up. He loved it. And he said, I loved fishing, but I didn't fly fish till I got older because I didn't think I could afford it. Fly fishing,
Yeah.
People go into one particular chain, Orvis. I love Orvis. I go there all the time. Our local Orvis shop is an amazing shop because it feels like a fly shop. It doesn't feel like a retail store because the people that work there are great.
Right.
But, if you're lower middle income and you see a rod for $900, you're like, screw that. I'm not, you don't think like, oh, there's other options or whatever, So, the reason we say fly fishing is dead is because it's a new era. We're excited to see, females coming into the sport, more females coming into the sport, although there were always females in the sport, right? Maybe we're just bringing more attention to it. We're excited about the new species. But you said you were fly fishing for chubs. You know what I mean? So it's all the hat, but I guess, we just don't want it to appear non-approachable. We want fly fishing to be approachable. And I think we've experienced that during the COVID lockdown, because even my local fishing hole on the weekends is almost too full to fish at this point, which is sad, really, really sad. Makes me want to shut down the podcast and let's be done with it. But it's also great because it's not my river. We're all out there together, and the more people that are involved, the more people are going to want to preserve it, Yes. But we had talked about fly fishing. What are your thoughts on that? And you feel free to ream me out if you want, whatever you want to do, Les.
Well, I will take this point to apologize for my defamation comment, our earlier comment, because I am a word specialist. I really key on words. Mm-hmm. When you use the term fly fishing is dead, it's a declarative statement that's like, fly fishing is worthless anymore. That's what it says to most ears. Uh-huh. Now, if you take your generation and younger, which have grown up on things that saying, wicked good. I mean, that's a big one from Maine, and I use it all the time, and my wife says, "No, it's not.
It's not wicked." It's not
and
wicked.
So, when you talk about something that's sick, it's sick, man. It's like in my generation that's not good, but your generation, that's a cool thing,
right?
As Bob White would say, it's cool beans. And so there are terminologies that when they're used, it builds a picture in people's mind. And from my point of view, I don't really like how it says, but I thoroughly understand what you mean by it. Mm-hmm. And like I said, when I grew up, my grandfather fished with some notable people in the 40s. I'm frozen, so I think mine messed up. So hang on just a minute.
No problem. There you go.
Okay.
Back at it.
I'm back again.
So you're saying you were talking about your grandfather.
Yes. And my grandfather fished with some incredibly notable people back in the 30s, late 30s and early 40s. And he would not fish around here. He would fish to Wisconsin. He would go to Minnesota. He fished the driftless area for trout. He fished up in Canada for muskie and northern walleye. And then he would fish out in Yellowstone and Montana and Idaho, Wyoming for trout, to Alaska in the 30s and 40s. Okay. So, when you come back to Indiana and try to fish after having done that, even at that time, the mentality he had on a fly rod was, you would sitting in a boat with my grandfather was like standing next to McLean's father. Mm. It's 10-2.
Right.
10-2. You do with the rhythm. And it's a religion, that you basically there's a thing that you do and that's it. And you don't do anything different. I like to side, I am a side caster. I don't have much, and I'll roll over the top. Mm-hmm. I have weird casts that just, people look at it and go like, how do you do that? Don't even ask. You don't even want to know. But so there were some purist elements that he had, but growing up poor, fishing, tying my own flies, what I could, and, scrapping, the cheap ones online, buy off the back out of Sports Field and buy this box of stuff that looked like it was tied by somebody that, like me, didn't know how to tie. And it was, on the cheap. Everything was on the cheap, cheap. And I remember the first rod I had, it was a Fenwick iron feather. Hmm. And I received it from company rep to try out. And I asked him if I wanted to send it back. He said, "No, you just keep it." And in some ways, I wish I'd sent it back, just from the standpoint and the outdoor ethics. That you don't accept things like that. They expect you to say things about their stuff. It was a good rod, a nice rod. I still have the rod. But I mean, like you, I look at the cost of a rod, and a really good rod, I'm going, man, I can't afford that. So you go down and you buy at Walmart, or you go to Cabela's and you buy a $95 to $125 rod today. And you think, oh, you cast, that's fine. But when you step up and you put that $750, $800 rod in your hand, loaded with a good line, tied properly, the right length of tippet, and you cast that fly, it's like, oh.
Yeah, I got a Barclay rod this past summer, in Chris Barclay, one of his handmade fiberglass rods, and that's all I want to fish with. I have to upgrade in the fall for larger species, because I think it's a 3-weight, but I mean, it doesn't. I mean, my buddy had a 3-weight Scott, and he's, and Scott makes a great rod, and they're expensive, and everything. But he's like, let me try that Barclay rod. I'm like, I don't know, don't break it, So
Right.
we switched to getting a Scott. I don't care about Scott, He tried the Barclay rod. He's like, dude, this is just. I mean, it's just butter. I mean, the thing is, for those smaller rivers, getting in the river. We have like he said, the right size line, the right size tippet, fishing dries, even smaller trout that are rising on it feels like a steelhead because of the weight. I mean, it's a dream. It does make a difference. It really does. But there's some cool companies in the market like TFO who make a nicer rod for pretty affordable. I mean, it's not a $90 rod, but it's still way more affordable than a lot of the other rods. And you can still enjoy the sport, for less than.
Well, that's the thing that I'm a member of a group called the Fly Fish at FF@, have been since 1993.
Oh, wow!
And it's the oldest running listserv on the internet.
Really,
and it's fly fishing.
Figures.
And the people who have been a member of that were the people who were the Lefty Cray, Flip Pallet, and publishers of magazines and books, and book publishers, individuals who were, big movers and shakers in the background of technology, and they loved fly fishing. So have known and met a lot of very interesting people through that. And that was one of the more constant comments that came up. Individuals who would tout a new Orvis rod or the new Sage or the new Thomas & Thomas or whatever, high end, and custom made. And we had 4 or 5, probably we had 3 or 4 really of the top bamboo rod makers, and the most elite of the graphite makers. When graphite first came online. And, so people talk about the speed of the rod and the ability to punch the wind and everything. I mean, if you're fishing Tierra del Fuego or, Wyoming around Bend, or, around the Wind River area, out on the Big Mo, when a wind blows up or something, you're going to need some punch to get through that wind. Indiana, we get wind, but when you get down the creeks, you don't have that big wind. So a decent 7-weight in glass will punch all that you need. And you don't have to be really pretty when you're casting to smallmouth.
Sure.
You just have to put it out there.
Yeah.
And so, there was a constant thread of conversation as to whether or not, do you really need that $800 rod? Well, the answer is no, you don't. You can get by go to a garage sale and pick one up for $45.
Right.
Line it with a good line, put a nice reel on it, and you're good to go. You can cast. You'll improve your cast. But it's like Joe Mahler says, when you put a proper rod in your hand, it's not difficult to learn how to cast well.
Right.
And if you don't have a good rod, a well-balanced rod with proper line, you cast you'll get the line off into the air and onto the water, and you'll catch fish. But there's a difference. Mm-hmm. It's like everything. There's a difference when you do it right.
Right.
You can do it, but if you do it right, it's even better.
I think I told this story recently, but this past summer I was up on I think it was the Upper Manistee, and I was fishing with my Barclay rod, and it looks kind of funky. It's the tobacco color, and it's just beautiful. Anyways, so I come up on this group of guys. They're in the fanciest boat. It's a handmade boat. They got every contraption on their waders. Every nipper, everything you could think of. GoPros, all this stuff. And they're fishing, and I'm wading the whole thing. I'm not in a drift boat or anything. And I got some decent waders. I'm willing to spend money on good stuff, but I don't have, I don't look like an Orvis shop, and I don't have a drift boat or anything. So they've been fishing. I'm like, have you guys been catching anything? No, it's been kind of rough today. And, but they're kind of blowing me off. They think I'm just some punk, So, okay. And they just fished this hole. I was like, you mind if I fish through? And they're like, and mind you, I haven't caught any fish all day. They're like, yeah, you go ahead and fish. There's nothing in it, though, because we just fished it. It's just rough. I was like, okay. So, like, my third cast, I pulled out a pretty decent, it was like 12, 13-inch brown, And they hadn't caught anything all day, and I'm on this Barclay rod, and so all of a sudden they're just like, whoa, they're like, what kind of rod is that? Is that bamboo? And it's like, and then all of a sudden they were super nice, but it felt so good to that was the only fish I caught all day. Well, I caught two. I caught one more later on, but it was like so cool to catch that in front of them. Like, you don't always have to have all the stuff, and there's so much stuff to buy. You can buy so much stuff, but really it goes back to the right rod, the right line, a decent reel. If you're going for trout, it's pretty much a spool, but you still want a nicer reel, and doing it the right way, like you said, just doing it right, and you'll have a lot of fun on the river. Even if, like, I remember my first real fly rod was I think it's called White River from Bass Pro Shops.
Yeah.
And I won it at a sales contest at work. I told the story before on the podcast, and it's a great rod, and it's a little combo, and it's not bad, It's
a good Chinese rod.
Yeah, it's a good Chinese rod, and I'm not. Yeah, and they're all. Yeah, I'm not gonna go there, but yeah, it's a good Chinese rod, and it does well. So what's coming up for you? I know you have your website, but what other things, if you'd like to talk about it, what other things are coming up for you, Les?
Wow. In January, I am posting myself, or whatever, to release a podcast.
Okay.
And this is, I'll just kind of interject here. This has been, the first official podcast that was ever done was in, I think, April of 2004.
Okay.
And I was listening to it, and happened to be listening because I was listening to another guy, Dave Weiner, who's a pioneer in blogging. He actually designed the first blogging tool. And the gentleman, and I never can think of this guy's name. He was the first VH1 host.
Okay.
And he did the VH1 hosting for probably 5 years, set the standard. Then he left and he went to Denmark to become a radio announcer on a Danish station there in Copenhagen, I think. And yes, Copenhagen. And he and Dave got together because of the blog and talking coding back and forth. And what this guy wanted to do was to put on radio. He wanted to use the blog as, digital radio station.
Wow.
Just, you go to a radio station, you got disc, and you plug it in and let her go. And you don't have to even be there because so many radio stations they're atomic.
Right. Yep.
They're automatic, autonomous stations. And that's what he was interested in. He could have a station going, playing off of his, at that time, the brand new iPod, and turn that thing on and let her go. And it's playing off in that direction while he's doing live. He was talking to Dave and at the same time looking out his window, and he witnessed the assassination of one of their a guy that was running for parliament or PM, prime minister, and he saw it. And there was a girl in a cafe across the way who was a friend of his who was on her iPod, and she spoke into it saying, it's just whatever in Janish, he just been assassinated, da da da. It came across to him. He saw it. He typed it in and made a comment and on his iPod, and that back and forth, he and Dave talked about it, typing wise. And that became the very first live blogcast.
Wow.
Okay. And so, I've known about this, and I've been thinking, I need to do this. I have helped people, I don't know how many people set up podcasts, blogs, vlogs, all kinds of media stuff. And I have never produced one. I've done a lot of, semis and, see what it looks like and all that kind of stuff. And so I said, okay, I'm going to jump in the water and create a ripple. And that's what the name of the podcast is Beyond the Ripples.
Great. Well, let us know when that comes out. Speaking of ripple, one more thing before we...
I don't want any ripple wine. Use it, whatever. No, go ahead. Before
we go on, before we, as a pastor would say, in closing, ripple is a shout out to all the Grateful Dead fans. And part of the fly fishing is dead, where we got that is the Grateful Dead. I'm a Deadhead, and it is a different state of mind when you go to a Dead show. I've never been to a Dead show. Our Dead Company now, but I would have loved to have gone. Paul Torres, who's going to talk about it. I don't know if his podcast aired last week or it's coming up next week, but he's a Deadhead too. We have that in common. And he was touring around with Jerry Garcia, just as a Deadhead. And when Jerry died, but we talk about synchronicity. We talk about getting into that zone. It's almost a spiritual thing. But Ripple, it reminds me of that, so I think that's really cool. I'm very excited about that. Please let us know when that comes out. We'll be sure to give you a shout out. And see, what you got. What is it? What's it going to be about? Is it going to be interviews? You're going to be telling stories like your mom, or what exactly is the format of that?
Pretty much all the above. One of the things, like I said, I've been a member of the Fly Fish At for several years, and I was a member of Outdoor Writers Association, which I plan to probably rejoin next year. And I've gotten to know a lot of people. And as you can tell, I'm a little gray.
A little bit.
The number of sands in my hourglass on the top side are decreased a lot. And there's a whole lot of us like this. And I've wanted to go out and interview people. Take it on the road and go out and just interview people where they are, whether they're a fly fisherman, upland game hunter, waterfowler, artist, writer, I don't care what it is. Just interview them where they are, what they're doing, do a video of them to record, and then present that to people. COVID has been that one thing that has brought together almost everything I've worked on for 35 years. And that was what we call social media, bringing it together to publish information and media of any kind as a creative information architect to tell the story of people. The Hawaiian people have a word called kuka kuka. And the short story of this is that two old guys that known each other, they've fished the reef for decades. One old guy's walking by and the other fellow, aloha, says, "Hey, kuka kuka." And they come up and they sit on their porch and they talk story. And that's what kuka kuka means. And the little kids come around and they listen to the two old guys telling the story of fighting the sharks and catching the big, fish and whatever. Kuka kuka is what we do when we bring community in and we tell the story. That's what Beyond the Ripples is going to be about. It's going to be not just a story of Jeff Troutman, podcaster. It'll be Jeff Troutman who got himself to Michigan as a musician working in a mega church and decided he wanted to take it to a smaller congregation, one-on-one, and increase it and talk about what he believes to be a very important thing. And what is beyond the ripples. You take a rock and you throw it out in the water and it ripples out, and you watch it, you see it go, and it goes and it goes. And there's a point to where you don't see that, but that ripple is still going. It's the same thing with sound waves. You hear that, but that sound goes. A light, you shine that light out in the sky, it goes to you only see it so far, but it keeps going. The ripple of that light is going through the universe. And that's what happens, when you meet and have a coincidence with another person, there is an effect. You may not see the result of that effect for decades. And we talk about my dad. My dad's, he was killed in a chainsaw accident. And I sold insurance. Well, he sold for Prairie Farmer Insurance. And I went behind and I started working in his routes and selling insurance. And I sold for 2 years, and it was all I could do. I was not my sack of rocks, as he would say, but I loved talking to the people. But for 14 years after that, I could walk into a farm in Fleet, any place that had chainsaws, and I would overhear somebody say, "Now you be careful of that chainsaw. There was a good fella that da-da-da," and they'd be telling about my dad. And so it was something that brought to attention a lot of people to be safety conscious. But that's the kind of ripple that we never know. You just never know. So you teach somebody to fish, fly fish. 30 years from now, they're doing a podcast. Jeff Troutman took the time to teach me to fly fish, and it's changed my life.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate it. I look forward to hearing what you have, especially hearing some of the interviews and some of the people that you know. I look forward to that. So we'll be sure to put that up. In the meantime, if someone wants to get a hold of you, Les, how would they do that?
Just simply go online and Google and type in the word Ofieldstream.
Okay.
OFIELDSTREAM. And you'll find me. And if you want to look at a website specifically, go to about.me/Ofieldstream.
All right. We'll be sure to put those links in the show notes. I look forward to hearing your podcast. Please keep us up to date on that. I'm looking forward to hear that. Thank you very much, and you have a great night.
You too, Jeff. Thank you.
Well, Bill, thanks for hanging out with me this week.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Every week we hang out. It's just a good time, especially when we can record in the morning time.
Yes.
It's just on point. It's fresh. It's delicious. It's wonderful.
That's weird calling it delicious, but I mean...
It's delicious. Delicious. It's delicious has to do with taste. You have good taste. That doesn't mean you're necessarily eating something.
All right.
Do you know what I mean? Is that fair?
That's fair.
So could something be delicious without it being food?
I don't know. I still say it's food. I don't know.
No, things can be juicy and not be food.
That's true. And then it gets creepy. Then we're getting into something I'm not comfortable with. I think I need an adult.
Well, I read it on the back of someone's pants. It says juicy.
I thought I had my butt covered. I'm sorry.
I was just giving you a hint.
These pants were a gift.
Oh, God, it's out of control. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me and Bill this week on the Remote No Pressure podcast. Bill, did you have anything to add this week?
Oh, man, I did. I was prepping it, and when I was walking down the steps, it lost. I've
been asking you the same question for a long time. I think you need to get your crap together and have something prepared.
I think so, too.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us this week. Be sure to go to remotenopressure.com. Check out the sales we have on everything. Sales. Buy today.
You can't afford not to.
You can't afford not to. And until next time, go fishing.